Alright, evening everyone. I'd like to begin with a point of rebuttal. We've just been told that our side is against innovation because we dislike innovation in the form of cryptocurrency. This is a straw man argument. Weapons of mass destruction are an innovation. We don't think that they should proliferate, we would like to ban them. That doesn't mean that we're against innovation in washing machines. Going into the structure of my speech, my partners have shown you how in the real world cryptocurrency doesn't work as a currency. That it functions as a harmful business, a scam, a way to fleece people out of their money, a waste of energy, and various other harms. I'm going to show you why, even if we take cryptocurrency advocates at their very best, even if we assume this is more than a speculative scheme, it can and possibly will displace fiat currency. This prospect is rubbish. It is vastly inferior to the status quo of fiat currency, and we should ban crypto to avoid this coming to pass. So, the first thing to look at is what actually happened when a country made Bitcoin a cryptocurrency and legal tender. They attempted to move towards a system of exchange which relies upon cryptocurrency, El Salvador. The first thing that happened was that prices became hopelessly volatile. Bitcoin can go up by up to 5% up or down in a single day. When we consider that inflation of 5% in a year is considered out of control, you can see how this is obscene for a payment system. What actually happens, because these prices go all over the place, is that everybody quotes their prices in dollars, everyone pays in dollars, and no one uses Bitcoin because it's daft. On the day that everyone in El Salvador was given $30 in their digital wallets, anybody who didn't spend it that day had $25 by the end of the day. And that set them up for what was to come. A system of exchange where you had no idea what the value of your money would be day to day if you attempted to use Bitcoin. The result is that nobody bothers to use it. Some people signed up to get their hands on $30 because why wouldn't you? And then they lost interest in it. And in 22, practically nobody has signed up or used it. It is too complicated. It is too unreliable. The mantra of be your own bank may have seemed compelling to a few libertarians in 2008 after the banking system crashed. But in reality, we quite like that if we forget our codes or we send money in the wrong direction, there's an intermediary to get it back. We quite like that you don't lose everything if you misplace, the piece of paper you wrote down your password on. And we quite like a system which is usable, which is simple, which is intuitive, and that we're used to. And a final harm, since El Salvador has done this, $200 million of government money have vanished, unaccounted for. They went into Bitcoin, and no one knows where they've gone. And if that doesn't tell you about the harm that can happen to a poor country for whom $200 million is a lot, when you allow money out to be unregulated, when you allow money into a system completely out of control, and I'm not sure what will. But let's assume none of that stands. Let's assume those are teething problems, that somehow this will magically sort itself out, and that we should keep going and crypto can displace fiat currency. What happens is that we still see an inferior payment system to what we have at the moment. This is because most cryptocurrencies have a fixed supply of some kind, right? I think it's 21 or 23 million Bitcoin, I forget which. We find that with other cryptocurrencies which don't have an exactly fixed supply, they cannot be tweaked at will. They change algorithmically, they change with trends. There is no mechanism to set the money supply at a particular level or to alter it centrally. What this means is that as an economy grows, as the world economy gets bigger, and we have more transactions, we have more output, we have more goods and services, we have the same amount of cryptocurrency, well, whichever currency we choose, I'll probably refer to Bitcoin because it's the most well-known, the same amount of currency chasing these goods and chasing these services. What it means is we spread that. We spread it wider over more transactions. It means that prices have to fall, that less and less of this Bitcoin will buy the same thing. This means the value of the money is rising. The result of this is deflation. Why? Because if I can buy a car today, or I can buy it for 10% less next year, I'm probably going to buy it next year. I'm not going to spend money if I could keep it in my pocket and I can buy more in a month's time, in a year's time. The result across an economy is deferred consumption, it is reduced demand for goods, it is therefore reduced need for labour, it is unemployment, this can become recession, this can become reduced growth, this becomes unemployment. Why am I so sure of this? Because we've tried it. We put the world economy onto the gold standard. We said we limited the amount of money in circulation to be relative to the amount of gold. But gold supplies grew slower than the world economy grew, and the result was that we got the long depression that characterised the last quarter of the 19th century, with exactly this kind of deflationary pressure. exactly this kind of lower growth and output. Compared to the status quo, a fiat currency, where the government can make money supplies rise in line with growth, we can have price stability, money supplies can respond to growth in the economy, and therefore we avoid this kind of spiral. Sure, governments aren't perfect, they may not always get it right, but at least they can, at least there is the means to get it right, instead of a system rigged to work against growth, where you don't even give it a chance. This leads into nicely another harm, that you use monetary policy as a tool of economic policy. Because we'd say that the government can't regulate money, it can't set the interest rates, it can't set the base rate, it can't expand the money supply via various market operations, in the event that it chooses to do so, or to contract the money supply. What it means is that a powerful tool in the form of monetary policy is lost as a means to manage inflation, to manage fluctuations in growth, to manage the economic cycle. Right? For example, this is a huge part of the response to the crisis in 2008, and is a huge part of why it is so much shorter and so much less deep than the Great Depression. Again, sure, governments will get it wrong sometimes, but there are incentives for them to learn from their mistakes, there are incentives not to mess up, and governments have the ability fundamentally to recover from these mistakes. If they grow the money supply too much, as argued they've done in the last few years, they can now contract that, they can raise interest rates, they can sell assets. Compare this again to a system where the government simply has that tool taken away from it. We take away its most powerful tools, or some of its most powerful tools of economic policy. We see in the Great Depression the struggle of countries who stayed on the gold standard. It grew slower. A simple illustration, if you will. We see 100 years of turgid growth. We allow Britain to use monetary policy. We see growth turbocharges. We see it accelerates because we allow the government to have a crack at running the economy well. We give it a chance instead of creating a system rigged against effective economic policy. We discover that if you don't tie the government's hands behind their back, they have more of a chance of doing something useful. A final point, the point about energy, the point that currently under the status quo, Bitcoin mining uses as much electricity as Argentina. Now consider a world where we rely on cryptocurrency, a world in which the number of transactions skyrockets, a world in which the amount of this processing that needs to happen skyrockets. Now imagine the sheer volume of this mining, the sheer volume of energy being used. We're talking orders of magnitude greater than the status quo, which is already a medium-sized country. I think that in a world which is struggling to wean itself off carbon-based energy, a world that is trying to cut its energy consumption, switching to a phenomenally inefficient financial system that uses vastly more energy than our banking system at the moment is a pretty poor idea. So what have we told you overall? We've told you that crypto doesn't work in terms of what it's supposed to do. We've shown you various harms. And we've shown you that even if it could do what it's supposed to do, it would still be pretty rubbish. And that seems like an excellent reason to ban it. Thank you.